Hi, this is Dee with University of San Diego Career Development Center. Welcome to Alumni Zoom Trips, our virtual interview series with USD alumni experts about the latest information and updates regarding COVID-19 and how to navigate the many uncertainties of the current job market. This program is co-hosted with Office of Alumni Relations. Joining me today for the second in our four-part interview series are two USD alumni, Dr. Mo Abouzari, Medical Science Liaison at Thermo Fisher, and Dr. Jesse Hall, Chief Medical Officer at Sublimity Therapeutics. Thermo Fisher has worked rapidly to develop the diagnostic kits currently being used to diagnose COVID-19, and Sublimity is running clinical trials around the world to shed further light on COVID-19's transmission and prevention. So hello, Jesse and Mo. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you with us today. So just to start off, can you briefly introduce yourselves and give us a little bit more background about, get a little bit more information about your background?
Sure. Hi. I guess I go first since the last name is started with AB. Nothing has changed in my life. So I graduated from USD in 1999 with a chemistry degree, and I worked as an analytical chemist for several years before I went back to podiatry school, and I graduated in 2008 as a podiatrist. One thing led to another one. I got involved in wound care, which was a very area of interest to me. That led into me becoming an MSL and not wanting to practice. Long story short, I have been involved in infectious disease prevention for almost about 7 years of my 10 years as a medical science liaison, and currently I work with a division in Thermo Fisher that actually utilizes a diagnostic test to figure out if patients getting admitted into the ED and ICU, if they are having a viral infection or a bacterial infection for differential diagnosis. And then if they are having a co-infection, they can utilize our test, which is called procalcitonin, to determine if the patient's actually going to heal or not, and what changes they might need to do in order to monitor these patients.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks so much. And Jesse, can you please tell us a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Jesse Hall. I'm the Chief Medical Officer of Sublimity Therapeutics, and I graduated from the University of San Diego in 1995. I then went on to medical school, and from medical school, I had interest in clinical research, and I've been doing clinical research for the last 16 years. Currently, I work for Sublimity, and at Sublimity, we do research in inflammation and specifically in gastrointestinal disease. And we currently have an ongoing phase 2 clinical trial that's being significantly impacted by COVID-19.
And from your expertise, can you provide us information about sort of the latest information on COVID-19? What are some of the latest updates?
I'll let Jesse go first.
Sure. So certainly looking at the disease from the perspective of globally, I think you saw an initial impact to Asia, and that subsequently spread to Europe, and now we're starting to see a significant rise in the number of cases here in North America. Looking at the death rates, I think the death rates are alarming, and certainly over the next month or so, we're going to know more about the disease and know more about the death rates. Unfortunately, I think over the next 30 days, we're going to see a peak in the number of cases, which will also be associated with a peak in the number of deaths. We're learning more about the virus all the time. I think the work that most company is doing with regards to testing is going to be critical moving forward, just for us to understand the impact of the disease. But from a business perspective, from a life perspective, I can say I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime.
And Mo, how would you weigh on this, especially considering that Thermo Fisher is developing some of these testing kits?
I agree with Jesse. I think over the years we have heard that a severe pandemic is coming, and we should have been ready for it. I don't think any place in the world was actually ready for this particular pandemic and the way it kind of infestated the entire world. Our company was actually the first company that the COVID-19 task force contacted in order to develop a rapid diagnostic test. And, for whatever that stand, our test was the first test that was less than 24 hours as of result. Today, there are other companies that have tests that last about 5 minutes, like Abbott or Roche. There are other companies along those lines. But I think the way we have approached this, it's to the lack of a better word, is a disaster. We were not prepared. We did not have enough testing capabilities. We did not have enough facilities to be able to do this testing, and we don't have enough precautionary measures in our hospitals to prevent care providers becoming sick. I can understand transmission between individuals that because of the way we live in this world, up to 3 weeks ago, I was still traveling. I travel as an MSL on the West Coast. So that I can understand, but to have a patient coming into a ED or a facility and infect care providers, that is just not acceptable. I agree with Jesse 100%. This has definitely shed light on our on preparedness for things to come. I also looking at some of the data, because we have to be presenting on this topic quite a bit, looking at the data. Italy is just catching up, and we haven't even catch our apex yet. When you listen to some of these news during the day with individuals like Governor Cuomo or some of the other governors or Dr. Fauci, what they're saying, I think, is very relevant and true. I don't, as a scientist, as a clinician, and I feel like Jesse would agree with me, we can't sugarcoat this thing. This is a huge situation we have worldwide, and we were caught, and we're just playing catch up. In order to be able to prevent this, we need to play offense rather than defense.
And related to that, Jesse, how do you think the pandemic will affect life in the long term?
Yeah, so I think we'll certainly see a short-term disruption to life. I don't imagine that we're going to have any return to a normal situation until likely September. I do think that likely over the next 30 to 60 days, you'll start to see activities returning. I hope that the virus presents some seasonality. It likely will. It'll probably be forced to have some seasonality based on the fact that children aren't in school, universities aren't in session, so we're likely spreading the disease less now. And once we start to catch up from a healthcare perspective, I think Mo touched on a lot of good points with regards to our preparedness. Once our preparedness starts to catch up, we have more protective gear for our healthcare providers. Once we have the appropriate number of hospital beds, the appropriate number of respirators for ICU patients, I think the fear will start to subside. But critically for me will be us understanding how many patients or how many people have contracted the disease and have subsequently cleared the disease. I think the next step beyond what we're doing with regards to viral testing will be antibody testing to understand who's actually immune to the disease. And hopefully we can start to re-initiate the economy. If we have our economy closed for 2 or 3 months, I think it's going to be devastating. So we're going to have to start to look at risk versus benefit with regards to the measures that we're taking.
And I know that there are vaccinations that have been developed to counter the disease. When do you think they'll be available for use on patients?
So my speculation is consistent with what you're hearing on the news or by other specialists. I don't foresee a vaccine coming in the next 12 to 18 months. I think the true breakthroughs will be finding medications that are available currently to treat the disease. There's a number that have been discussed. There's a number that's in development. And I think if we can expedite the approval pathway for some of those potential therapies, that will provide us hope and hopefully bridge the gap between now and when we have an effective vaccine.
What kinds of challenges has the pandemic created for your organizations, and how are you addressing them? And Mo, we can start with you.
Sure. So the biggest one would be lack of travel. As a predominantly a service industry, we consider ourselves a service industry. Our entire sales force now is conducting business virtually. And despite of what we think that, our world is connected globally through internet, for lack of better word, we need handshaking on a lot of things. Face-to-face interactions are important. Understanding the customer need is important, but being able to put a value to what that customer wants comes quite a bit from personal relationship that you cannot have through a device. So that definitely has impacted our numbers. As of Monday, I found out that for certain levels, we are getting a 5% furlough on our paychecks. That goes along the same line as not getting bonuses, not getting commission checks for our sales force and other employees. Our leadership is taking a pay cut of 50% to 25%. I just saw it on the news. Companies like Macy's, Kohl's, and others, their leadership, they completely donated their salaries. So truly to what Jesse said, I think if our economy goes in this route, we might not be able to sustain a lot more necessary individuals who are not in the immediate vicinity of the service roles, like restaurant worker, like salespeople at car dealership, at grocery stores, at malls. I have heard that through some contact that some of the car dealership have laid off some of their employees. And that overall, when you look at how many people have applied for unemployment, it's humongous. Whatever we have gained in the past 8 years, I think this 2 months, and bear in mind, not all the states right now are at stay home still, which is baffles me, but anyway, the more this goes on, the more people are going to be out of work. But specifically for our job, travel has stopped, revenues not coming in from certain areas. Our company was deemed necessary essential workers, so a lot of our facilities are still open, but our sales force that actually makes the money for the company, it's not out there. So
during this time, do you have any remote roles that are available, or have you halted hiring completely?
As of I understand, up to last week, they were still considering some of the remote roles, but because of the situation, and bear in mind, my company employs about 70,000 individuals. It's not as big as some of the other biotech companies out there, or certainly not as big as Amazon. But in order to be able to keep the current employees, they have cease hiring at the moment.
Okay. And how about Sublimity Therapeutics, Jesse?
Yeah, so I guess we're in a different situation than most company. We're a small biotech that's effectively funded by venture capital. So we have roughly 60 employees. So with regard to impact to work, we've ceased all. We actually think we were fairly progressive with regards to scaling back on people, and then we implemented work from home, and we've been doing that for almost a month now. We've been able to work and continue to work effectively, at least internally, but the true impact for us as a company is our clinical trial. So we have a global clinical trial with 17 countries involved, mainly in Europe, so Central and Eastern Europe. And when hospitals are impacted by COVID-19, or investigators are impacted, or patients are scared to come to the clinic for their visits, that significantly impacts our trial. And patients are less likely to enroll in clinical trials during these times. So certainly we've seen a strong impact to our recruitment, which is tough for a small company because our funding is based on reaching certain milestones, and our milestones are recruitment based. So what we've had to do is certainly tighten our belt and look at our costs and how to manage costs through the short term. I'm hoping that over the next 30 to 60 days, we get a return back to it, at least a level of comfort where patients as well as physicians feel comfortable bringing those patients into their clinic, and then we can start to resume life as normal. But again, as I said, this is unprecedented. It's something we've never seen in my lifetime, and we'll just have to see how this plays out in the coming months.
And what would your advice be to our graduating seniors and alumni in career transition who are trying to navigate this uncertain job market?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I think the students or the seniors now that will be looking for jobs in the summer are certainly in a better situation than someone who's looking to transition or looking for roles right now. I would imagine many companies are in the position to conserve cash to reduce costs. So I imagine the job market will be tough for some period of time. As I said previously, I'm hoping that we get a return to normalcy sometimes towards the end of the summer. And I'm hoping that return is associated with a rapid economic development. The government, I think, is being very proactive with regards to putting funds into our economy, and I'm hoping we'll see the payoff towards the end.
And Mo, do you think end of summer is a feasible timeline?
To mimic both Jesse and Dr. Fauci, I have to say that unfortunately the virus determines where we're going to be. And, you know, as you're all aware, based on what you hear from other news outlets, we have not truly grasped the necessary requirement for making sure this disease doesn't spread as quick as it does. There are still states that are not implementing stay-at-home procedures. There are still small areas in the country that, because they don't have it or they have less of it, they're not following the guidelines of the CDC and the experts. So knowing the reason we have seen countries like China coming back from this is because of their government, the way their government acts. And, you know, we don't have that type of a government here, thank God, but at the same time, we can implement martial law. For example, Italy was able to do this by basically putting a halt on everything. And as of today, their new cases are going down. Now, did Italy hit their peak? We don't know. And Jesse brought up a great point. we don't know this virus enough to be able to predict. We can only predict models at the moment. Summer, based on what I know from virology, I think it's the higher, with the temperature changing, we might have a better chance to catch some of a break. I don't know enough about the mutation of this virus. I have heard there are about 8 different variations circling the globe. And bear in mind, when we go into our hot season, South Equator goes into their cold season. So what is the transmission rate at that point? So I think time will tell. My message for your graduating seniors would be, I think there is enough companies that's still hiring remote individuals. There is enough remote jobs out there, thanks to the technology we have been dealing with for the past 15 years. For people who were staying at home before and working through these technology, it was kind of funny for me when they mentioned, now you have to learn to work from home. I have been lucky to work from home for the past 8 years. I travel and I work from home. So yeah, it put a little bit of kink in my everyday planning, but there is, I think, enough jobs out there. Now it comes up, and Jesse brought up another great point. So with the graduating senior right now, the fact that they're just getting out there, they require less of a salary. So there are companies that are willing to take these individuals over somebody with 5, 6, 7 years of experience that has already moved up in the ladder of the corporation, and they have an expectation for their salary. But it just depends on which companies are they able to get into, and their major applies. Somebody with a chemistry degree or a biology degree might not be able to work in a lab, but someone with communication, someone with English lit or something like that, more of a art side of things, liberal arts, they will probably have a better chance to get into those roles versus someone with a predominantly science background. I'm not saying science is doomed. No, I'm not saying that.
Very much aligned with this. For those individuals who are interested in STEM careers, can you tell me about what are keys to success in your fields? And Jesse, you can go ahead and take this one.
Sure, absolutely. So is this in relation to the COVID-19 or just skills
just in general?
Yeah, because I do think there'll be a short-term impact, at least from COVID-19. I think there'll be a definite emphasis more in public health. There's certain areas of the industry, the biotech and pharmaceutical industry, that will benefit by the increased focus on this disease. But just with regards to scientists and careers, so I do come to the event that you hold there at USD. I think it's a night in science or whatever the
future with sciences. Yep.
Yeah, future in sciences, and I'm always impressed with the students that I have the opportunity to interact with. I think they're getting a really excellent education at USD. And the help that we can provide as alumni is being able to ascertain what the strengths and the weaknesses of those students are, in balance with what their interests are. And we have to remember that most students, and I can recall when I was graduating from university, I did not understand all of the various opportunities that are available to majors of chemistry, biology, and other areas. So I think it behooves the student to speak with alumni, to speak with the resources that are provided by the university, and just try and understand all the various opportunities that are available. Most chemistry and biology students that I speak with, they only understand that there's a path to, let's say, medical school, or there's a path to graduate education. But there's any number of different areas of science and medicine that are available to them, and I think it's our role to help guide them.
And I'm sure, Mo, you can attest to that too, right? Having both the medical background as well as the business background.
Absolutely, I agree with Jesse, and I'm so glad that there is a function at our school like yourself that are doing these events. When I went to school there, and my field long time ago, there was nothing like this. And I think it's very important, as Jesse mentioned eloquently, that they realize science has changed the same way the technology has changed. So now there are companies that hire business individual with a scientific background, because at the end of the day, that company needs to make money. So you need to understand both. I have a common colleague who graduated a year after me from USD. He had a business degree with a minor in chemistry. And he has gone far in his career working in supply chain management for a biotech company. So there are lots of opportunities out there, but it's just a matter of opening your mind per se, because as Jesse again put it very well, medicine, science just doesn't mean medicine or graduate school. There is other opportunities. You just have to be flexible. And considering that nowadays we live in uncertain times, and it doesn't have to necessarily do with COVID-19, is in general, economy goes up and down, there are cycles. You have to be adaptable if you want to stay relevant and employed. And then when you graduate, seek a higher degree. You know, not necessarily medicine, not PhD, but have a way out that you can rely on. If someday my medical degree doesn't pay, I'll follow my business background. And as you said, I got an MBA for that reason, because every job I looked at in my field I was going to go to, which wasn't practice related, the second line was preferred MBA. So one day I said, you know what? I prefer an MBA as well. And I went and got one. And it wasn't that difficult.
Right. Just being able to diversify our skill sets, right?
Absolutely.
And again, related to that, what would you say if we were to pick top 3 skills? What are sort of the top 3 skills of the future in your work? And Jesse, we can start with you, and then we'll go on to Mo.
Yeah. So I think the old skills that we talked about, the cliche skills, are still very important. You know, it comes down to teamwork. It comes down to communication. It comes down to the ability to digest new knowledge and then be able to communicate that knowledge. So I think those skill sets are still very valuable. Obviously, the world it looks a lot different in 2020 than it did in 1995 when I graduated from USD. I think there's a lot more technology that's involved. Either, I mean, I think what we're doing right now would be unimaginable 25 years ago. We're working just via a computer. So I have been impressed with the university and being able to continue to stay ahead of the curve and be able to educate students on relevant current technologies. And I can't tell you where we're going to be 10 years from now, but I'm sure the university will stay ahead of that curve.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Mo?
I think he basically covered everything. I would say interpersonal skills still going to be very important. And staying up in technology, as Jesse said, is very important, because, you know, we're not using the same cell phones as 10 years ago. We're not even using the cell phones we used 3 years ago. The technology has come so far. And in order for future to be relevant, you need to understand how technology is evolving and in what sense applies to what you're doing. So yeah, the cold skills are still there. The softer skills, it's just what you have to learn on the go kind of a way. So I don't know if we can truly teach individual interpersonal skills. I know Jesse took the research side. I did a little bit of practice and then went to the research side. You can't teach, and I remember this clearly as one of my mentors mentioned it to me, you can't teach bedside manner. You just can't teach that. That's something that the individual learns it on their self. You can be the smartest doctor out there, and when you enter the room, you just turn everybody off. So still, I would put the cell phones away a little bit and try to connect with individuals like the events you guys have. I think is very good to have those events, because a lot of time when somebody's older than you or is in the field, you kind of feel like they are unapproachable. And that's not just true. It is approachable. You just have to want to connect with them. And LinkedIn seems to be one of the best platforms to do that right now.
So keep it high touch as much as we can when we're not social distancing, right?
There you go.
I do want to be mindful of time, so I'll just, I just have one final question. And what is a typical work day in the life of a medical science liaison and a chief medical officer? Jesse, we'll start with you.
Certainly. Yeah, and I have to say that what I like about my role, my job right now, is that no day looks the same. One of the reasons I moved away from clinical medicine is a lot of days can look the same in clinical medicine. My days look very much different day to day. So I can go from looking from a strategic perspective at what direction we're heading as a corporation, looking at funding opportunities, to designing new clinical trials, down to looking at individual patient data. So looking at safety data to understand how our patients are progressing through the study and ensuring that our products are safe and effective. So my goal for finding a role was to make sure that I had variety. And I can certainly say that my job and my role has a lot of variety.
Thanks for that. And Mo, for you?
So mine, I would say 50% of the days are very similar and 50% are very different. So the similar part is that I work on a certain product that I present on. Now, that could be a small group presentation, could be one-to-one, or could be a ground round, which I truly enjoy when I get in front of various different specialties and being able to answer their question. No single physician asks similar questions from you when you present. The other part of it revolves around becoming a subject expert matter, because when I represent this testing or diagnosis that we do, I need to make sure that as much as I can answer those questions. Now, those questions could be coming from different specialties, so you always have to be mindful and telling individuals if you don't know something, to be transparent. The days that I'm on the road depends on where I travel. You know, there is that little stress of traveling, getting to the airport or driving up to LA, which I'd rather, travel in the airplane, but that's just LA traffic speaking. Dealing with different specialty. I've worked with everything from a hospitalist group to ICU physicians, to ED physicians, to infectious disease physicians, pharmacy directors, and sometimes I go all the way up to C-suite. So it does have the variety, not as good as I would say Jesse's position has, but it has a different flavor. It's one of those positions that as a clinician, when you get in the field, I don't know if I ever want to go back to becoming a clinician, as Jesse very well put it. when you're a clinician, your days are very similar. You, depending on where you are in the hospital, you're round in the morning, then you go to clinic, see, 40 patients based on your workload. You do a bunch of charts, and then you bring your work home. So there are certainly differences between clinical practice and what I do, but it's one of those roles that not too many people know about it, but once you know it, you never want to leave it.
Well, thank you so much for that. I'd like to thank you both for your time and for your insights, and I hope that you'll remain safe and healthy out there, and have a great rest of your day.
Likewise, thank you. Hope to see you guys in one of those science nights again.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. We'll have one coming in the fall.
I sure hope so.
Once the dust settles down, yeah.
Have a great day. Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
1 second, do not hang up. All right.